if you missed class notes today or you just want a few more examples, I'm going to go through the remaining 3 properties that we added today. So we're going to take a look at negative exponents, dividing, and dealing with a 0 exponent. Okay, there's going to be more details in the notes uploaded on Canvas, but here we'll give you some verbal explanation if you're looking for some of that as well. So let's first of all take a look at what we do if we have a negative exponent. Okay, a negative exponent is actually going to tell us that it's not in the appropriate location of a fraction. So instead of being in the numerator, it's in the denominator, or instead of being in the denominator, it's in the numerator, right? This is telling us that it needs to go from the top to the bottom. So if we have something like x to the negative third, this negative is telling us that it's not placed appropriately. Now, we don't see it, but this x to the negative third is actually in a fraction, right? We know that this is actually over 1. Which tells us that this x to the negative third is in the top or in the numerator of a fraction. Okay, we want to get that negative to go away because we say that negative exponents aren't simplified. So to get that negative exponent to go away, we're going to move it to the other side of the fraction. So we're going to move it from the numerator to the denominator. And once we've changed its location, we've dealt with the fact that that negative is telling us it's in the wrong place, and therefore the negative goes away. Now, in this problem, there's nothing else, so we have to fill in the numerator on our own, but that won't be the case with every problem we look at. Okay, so if there's nothing there, we're going to fill that in with a 1. Okay, so our property says that for a negative exponent, we are going to move the base and its exponent. Nothing else in the problem. And we're going to move it to the other side of the fraction. Okay, so now let's take a look at a couple examples here. So for example, maybe we have 4w to the negative 3. Okay, so we do have a negative exponent, but the key here is that we want to identify the base and its exponent and only that. So the only thing here is that our negative exponent is negative 3 and the base that it goes with is w. Which means we can't do anything with that 4. That 4 is where it belongs. Okay, so this is currently, right, it's sitting over 1, which means it's in the numerator, so we're going to move that w with its exponent to the denominator. Once we move it, we're then going to make it positive. Okay, that 4 is staying put, so that 4 is still left over in the numerator, and we'd have a simplified answer of 4 over w to the third. Maybe we have something like 2/5 over y to the negative 5. Okay, so if we look at this problem, our piece here that's negative is this y to the negative 5th, which means the 2/5 isn't moving, it's staying put, and this y is what's going to move to the other side. So now it's currently on the bottom, which means we need to move it up to the top. Okay, so I'm going to move this y up to the top, and once I move it, I'm going to make it positive. My 2/5 isn't going anywhere, so it's staying exactly as it was, and so my simplified answer is going to be 2y to the 5th all over 5. Okay, the next property that we're going to look at is going to be division or dividing. Okay, how do we divide with exponents? Okay, so if we have something like x to the 5th over x squared. Okay, so if we want to divide with exponents, we are going to subtract the exponents. So 5 minus 2 gives us 3, and so we'll get an answer of x to the third. Now, similar to the other properties that we were looking at in our notes yesterday, okay, we're still going to have to potentially deal with coefficients sitting in front, and coefficients always stick to the original property. So our coefficients are either going to be divided, but remember with fractions, sometimes all we can do is reduce. We're either going to divide or reduce the coefficients, right? The big numbers in front. Okay, and then we are going to subtract the exponents. And again, just like before when we were looking at these yesterday, the base has to match. Okay, so x's will stick to x's, y's will stick to y's. Okay, so maybe we have something like w to the 11th over w squared. Okay, we're simply going to take these exponents, so 11 minus 2 gives us 9, and we'll get an answer of w to the 9th. Now, notice I'm always subtracting top minus bottom because the order of subtraction we can't change. So we need to make sure we're always subtracting the top number minus the bottom number. So if we have something like c to the 5th over c to the 9th, we still need to now subtract top minus bottom. So 5 minus 9 is going to give us negative 4. And we just said in our last property with negative exponents that for a negative exponent, we would need to rewrite this by moving it to the other side of the fraction and making it positive. So this is going to have a final simplified answer of 1 over c to the 4th. Now, you can decide whether or not you sort of want to write this step in between with the negative exponent, but it's not a requirement. There's a couple ways that you can think about it. One option is to just think if you subtract and you get a positive exponent, you're going to write it in the numerator or the top of a fraction. If you subtract and you get a negative number, you're going to write it in the denominator of the fraction. Okay, and if you're going that route, then all you're doing is using the positive or the negative for the placement, but you're never actually writing down the negative sign. Okay, the other option that you can consider is to subtract in any order, but to make sure you're always putting the final answer where the larger exponent is. So since 11 is larger than 2, our final answer is going to be in the top of the fraction. Okay, on our second example, 9 was larger than 5, and so our answer was in the denominator of the fraction. Okay, either of those options or ways you want to think about it is fine. So let's say we have 12, a to the 5th, b squared over 8a to the 3rd, b to the 7th. Okay, so now we have some coefficients in front, and we said for the coefficients we would need to divide and or reduce them. So your options here are either to know how to reduce a fraction in your head, right? We would be thinking of a number that will go into 12, that will also go into 8, which is 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. The other option is that you could use your calculator. You could divide those out. You would just need to make sure you have your calculator turn it into an improper fraction. Okay, then we're going to take a look at our exponents. Again, we have to have matching bases, so I'm only going to work with the a's, and then I'll work with the b's separately. So 5 minus 3 is positive 2, which means I'm going to write it in the top of my fraction. Okay, then I'm going to deal with my b's. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. So because that's negative, I'm going to write it on the bottom of my fraction. Again, I'm not writing down the negative because I already wrote it in the proper location. So if you want some extra examples, you can look in the attached notes in Canvas. Otherwise, you should be completing your homework assignment using these properties.